everybody, and welcome back to the Modern Maze. Hope that you're having a beautiful day so far and that life is slowing down and speeding up in all of the right ways, leading up into the end of the year and our little holiday break. Today's episode is going to be our last episode of 2024. So we're going to talk about an update, firstly from myself and where I'm at. Then we're going to talk about like a little summary of 2024. I'm going to go through the results of the polls and questions that I put out to all of you last week. And then we're going to talk about hopes and aspirations for 2025. So let's start with myself. It's been a while since I've given an update. I am in Goa, India currently, where I've been for the last 3 weeks. Before that, I've been in India for about 2 months now. So I went traveling around up north for the first month, and then the second month in India I spent in my hometown because Diwali was happening and I got to spend lots of time with my family, which is amazing. Really got to slow down even more. And so I've been in Goa, and on Saturday I begin my yoga teacher training course. So it goes for the month. The intention behind that is to learn firstly about yoga philosophies and practices. Like, this is such an ancient part of Indian tradition. So I'm just really curious to learn about that. And then just to, to deepen my own practice and potentially teach one day. So knowing that I had this course, I decided that I'm going to be taking a step away from this podcast for the next couple of months. So I think I'm going to be back in Melbourne like around February time. And so I don't plan on releasing any more episodes until I'm back home. It's been amazing growing this platform and having this while I'm traveling. Like, it's given me such a good outlet, and I've had so much time to dedicate to this. But for this next little part of my trip, specifically first with the yoga course, I want to go really, really inward and dedicate time to myself, my mind, my body. And the process of developing and releasing an episode does take away from that. Like, there is an opportunity cost in that. And so I just want to intentionally take an extended amount of time for just myself and not have an excuse to go on the laptop, on the phone, and to really just disconnect digitally. So I plan on doing a bit of a digital detox as well this next month. And then in January, I'll be traveling around a bit with my brother and also a dear friend of mine. And so I want to be present with them as well. And I think we've done, including this episode, is 12 episodes for the year, which I'm pretty proud about. And I'm pretty happy that, 12 episodes were made. We had 4 guest episodes out of that. So yeah, it's been a really productive year in terms of getting this show started and up and running and covering a range of topics and having really amazing guests on as well. And so part of me feels like I've earned a little bit of a break. And keeping in theme, and this is something that I'm going to touch upon at multiple times in this episode, a a big theme that has emerged from this platform, I believe, and it's been interesting having that reflected back to me in the questions that I asked you all, and is that really focusing on ourselves and our community and our loved ones is how we can drive transformational change across the world. So with that intention in mind, I want to focus on myself for this next little bit and really intentionally prioritize myself in every way. And so that's the reason for a little bit of a break. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be absent or that I won't be posting stuff. Like if there's little things I want to share, then I will continue bringing you along on that journey. The time away as well is intended to just give me the space to think about what's next and what next year looks like for this platform. A big reflection of mine in 2024, actually, I might start with the biggest learning for me through this podcast in 2024 was when I first began this show. It was, I posed the question about, is it enough to reimagine our structures and systems, or is a global shift in consciousness needed to change the world? The thing that got me into sustainability really powerfully was when I read Donut Economics and learning about capitalism, where did it come from, the economy, how's it structured, who's winning, who's losing, how are we measuring that. So my mind was really fixated on that. In fact, the first name for this podcast was called Transcending Growth, because at that time, my belief was that we need to fix this problem of never-ending growth in order to change the world, which we do. But I broadened that scope as I thought about it more, and thus the Modern Maze was born. And it's interesting, I was looking at all of the episodes that we've released so far, and you can almost see the scope of what we talk about just get narrower and narrower as we go along. If you look at our first few episodes, we talk about donut economics, we talk about the rise of capitalism. We had Rachel on that spoke about big geopolitical matters and the state of the world. But then the further along we get, the trend that you can see is that we start to focus on things like gratitude, dualism, so separating, like a philosophical question about the separation of mind, body, nature, and the heavens. We talked about the power of community with Caroline in our last episode. And so to me, in 2024, the biggest learning or the biggest thing that I have realized and continue to realize is that real change needs to happen at all levels. It needs to happen with redesigning the economy and fixing political structures, et cetera, et cetera. But equally, that the focus is also on within ourselves and uplifting our communities and our loved ones and our families. And that if everybody did that, if a lot of people did that across the world, then we would see a change in the world. So to me, that was the biggest learning in 2024 is when I used to look at the world and how I could change it, it felt daunting. Like I'd learn about the economy, the global economy, all of the players, all of the forces acting on that. and I felt helpless. I felt like I couldn't make a difference at all. But when I think about myself, my loved ones, my immediate community, I feel more empowered that I can make a difference there. And that specific change in thinking is what I want to really take the time to think about how I want to take those thoughts into the next step. The biggest, I don't know, regret or thing that I wanted to do but didn't end up doing was actually putting things into action, meaning volunteering, using my body to help people and build things and support communities. And that was an intention going into this trip. But it's been way, way more inward work and things that I've really been processing all the way up till now that has been the focus for me. And I just didn't energetically find the space to do things like volunteering or actually get my hands dirty. And so that for me is a big thing that I want to come back to in 2025 is action. 2024 felt like a challenging year for our planet and our species. The war in the Middle East continued to escalate. It felt like the destruction of the earth was just continuing, and we really continue to feel the effects of climate change. It was also the biggest year of voting, democratic voting in global history. I think it's estimated that like 3.5 billion people voted this year. So we saw a record number of voters. We saw polarized views. We saw nationalism continue to dominate in areas that were concerned about migration. In some areas, we did see climate conscious and socially equitable agendas make headway. But we continued to see the division in people this year, and it was really brought out through all the elections. And it's something that I've really noticed in India, just as a side, is the division. A lot of amazing things also happened, as they always do. And there's an incredible amount of people that are working to, like 24/7 to make the world a better place. We had record-breaking investments in renewable energy and renewable energy output. We did have conservation wins. So, for example, the Amazon saw a decrease in deforestation rates. There is still deforestation. We need to stop it. It needs to be 0%, but it reduced a bit. This one, I'm not sure. I'm always not sure about this statement that I'm going to make. I feel like people are becoming more aware of what's going on in the world. The reason that I say I'm not sure about the statement is I don't know how much of this is the bubble of people that I'm in my community and the people that I just tend to gravitate towards. And yeah, like when I'm traveling as well, like not like 100% like-minded at all, but the type of people that I've tended to gravitate towards, yes, seem to share similar viewpoints. And so I'm never sure how much of this is actually my bubble versus what is actually going on in the world. But that being said, I do feel like there is an increase of awareness and knowledge about some of the things going on around the world and the state of the world. So to me, people are becoming more aware, and I do see that as a win. Of course, it's not as many people as we want, and there are many, many people that are unconsciously living and kind of asleep at the wheel, one would say, without judgment. But that's been a reflection of mine. And I'm not sure if it's just my bubble, but I feel like there is an awakening happening slowly. That's it for 2024. I don't want to get into the stats and numbers and dive too deep. It felt like a really intense year, especially the war in the Middle East really affected me. I felt a complete news burnout at the middle of this year. That's why I did my episode on gratitude. So it really felt intense. I had to take a complete step back from all of the news and completely disassociate and disconnect myself, which is not, it's not the thing I want to be doing, but it's the thing I had to do in order to protect myself and my energy. All right, let's go into what you all thought about these questions, because I think they're really interesting and they actually give me a really good direction for where I might want to take things next year. All right, let me pull this up. So our first question was, how optimistic are you about the future? The options were very optimistic, I'm not sure we can save ourselves, and we're fucked. %50 of you voted optimistic. Then we had we're fucked at 23%. I'm not sure we can save ourselves at 17%. And then very optimistic at 10%. So very optimistic is the least and optimistic is the most. So a spread, 50% optimistic. I think that's beautiful. I personally have felt all of these at some point this year. To me, there's a reason why for all of these questions, I did not put like an all of the above or like a catch-all answer, because if I was answering these and there was a all of the above, I'd probably click that on all of them. So for me, I have felt all of these things at different stages in this year, and in fact, throughout my life. But it's really interesting to see. Yeah, so majority optimistic. The fewest amount of people are very optimistic, and I think that's in line with what we're seeing in the world and media coverage, et cetera, et cetera. It's hard to feel very optimistic about the future. But to the people that say we're fucked, yeah, I get it. I wake up sometimes feeling that as well. But majority are optimistic, which is great. It's a great feeling to have and a great place to be in. And for the ones that are not in that, it's okay. It's completely natural and fine to feel that way. A lot of times I feel that way as well. Question 2 was, which global issues felt most urgent this year? Climate crises, rising inequality, political tensions and conflict, mental health challenges. Number 1, and no surprise for me at all, is 66% of people said political tensions and conflict. 24% said rising inequality. 10% said climate crises. And nobody voted for mental health challenges. I mean, this is in line with what I have felt about this year as well. Political tensions just dominated 2024. So I get it. Rising inequality, yeah, that felt really big as well. Cost of living. Like, rising inequality would have touched more of us maybe directly I don't want to say that. I'm not sure about that statement, but rising inequality really felt like it's happening all over the world. So I understand that. Climate crises, yeah. I mean, that is all still going on, and we're seeing the effects of climate change, and we're going to continue seeing the effects of climate change. So a few people voted for that as well. Number 3, what do you believe is the biggest barrier to change? Political leaders, economic priorities, the state of global consciousness, and systemic inequality. So we had a first place tie with economic priorities and the state of global consciousness, each with 31%. We then had political leaders being second with 25%, and then systemic inequality with 12%. So political leaders, economic priorities, and global consciousness pretty close to each other in terms of the numbers. But yeah, state of global consciousness, such a big factor into why the world is the way that it is. Economic priorities follows that as well. Political leaders, yes. And systemic inequality, it is all of it. To me, global consciousness and individual consciousness directly feeds into all of that. And I think systemic inequality is a symptom rather than a cause. So to me, that one is a little bit different than the rest. But yeah, global consciousness to me is the biggest barrier in how I see it. And I think that directly flows onto what we choose to prioritize in this world and what sort of people we choose to elect and have running the world. Question 4, what is the state of our... How did you perceive humanity's connection with nature in 2024? Strengthening, more awareness, growing but more shallow, weakening, more disconnection, non-existent in many areas. With 48% of votes, we had growing but still shallow. We had a tie for weakening and non-existent with 21%. And last, we had strengthening, more awareness with 10%. So a big majority said growing but still shallow. And then weakening, non-existent. So we don't think as an aggregate that we're massively improving our connection with nature. And that in a lot of cases it's weakening, non-existent, or that it's like on a surface level growing. To me, that makes sense. The world is getting more and more aware of nature, and I feel like that sacred connection is being discussed. With climate change and protecting the environment, I feel like a lot of it is like it's done, like a lot of people know what we have to do, right? And they know we need to save our forests, and we know we need to save our oceans and the animals and everything. And that is growing and rising, and it's a big topic of conversation. But yeah, I'm curious as to how many people are actually spending more time outside, really embracing nature, feeling connected to nature, feeling one with nature. Perhaps that's where these answers come from, is that, okay, we're seeing the recognition of this planet grow in many different ways, but perhaps we're not seeing the actual sacred personal connection that everybody should have with nature, is how I'm reading the results of this, which I find really interesting. And then, the weakening and disconnection and non-existent is the result of all this urbanization, this digitization. They just absolute disconnect from nature, and people just born in cities and living in cities, and more and more people living in cities than ever before, and will continue living, right? I think it's like over half of the world's population lives in cities, in concrete jungles. So yeah, I can see that as well. Do you feel like you can make a difference in today's world? Okay, before I say the results, I made a mistake in our last episode where I thought, before I counted up all the results, because I had it on different platforms, that a majority of people said unsure to this question. So that the choices were yes, no, and unsure. For some reason, I thought that a majority of people said unsure. When I looked at these results, I realized I was wrong about that. So actually, 55% of people said yes. 6% of people said no. And then 39% of people said unsure. So still a decent number of people. Majority of people saying yes, which is fantastic. We absolutely can. To the ones that say no, again, I get it. I felt the same way. I still cycle through those thoughts. And unsure, yes. To me, the unsure is that really big piece. And again, if you haven't listened to the last episode with Caroline, I recommend listening to all of my episodes. But that one in particular is a really good one to listen to, because firstly, it's a really interesting. Second, Caroline talks about some amazing concepts that I won't spoil here. And thirdly, it will give you an idea into where my head is at in terms of next year and what I want to do next with this platform. I won't say too much, but the unsure to me is big, because I have felt that and I continue to feel that. And so what I am exploring is, how does this platform and what I'm building in this community I'm building, how can we bridge the gap between being unsure or even saying yes and not, maybe saying yes as in you feel like you can, but you're still unable to do what you would like to do, right? So I think there's a follow-up question to this, which I will ask at some point next year. But I guess what I'm trying to understand and think about now is, okay, what role can this platform play in terms of, again, the unsures and the unable to bring them into the participation side, which again was referenced a lot in our last episode. Because for me, that is a journey for me as well. It's not as if I'm in that participation part, at least physically. Like, to me, this podcast is part of that, but I want to bring myself along on that journey as well. And so, yeah, that unsure, like this question to me is the most, I guess, relevant one for next year and what next year looks like. And how do we empower people to make change or to believe that they can make change? How can I empower myself as well? Last one. How often do you find yourself worrying about the future of our planet? We had always with nearly 50%, often with 11%, rarely with 37%, and never with 3%. So, majority, always. It's interesting. The vast majority of the votes were between always and rarely. So, yeah, 50% always, 37% rarely. To the always, that speaks to kind of the state of things. And again, I have felt all of those things. I've really felt that. To the rarelies, that's great. If you're not worrying about the future of the planet, that's a great place to be, right? I think that ties into how optimistic are you about the future. So to be in that space is great. And it's nice to have that balance, right? Again, I cycle through all of these. The always, the often, rarely. I think if I was to put myself in a bucket, it would be... Actually, I probably should have done that for all of these. I should have said what I would choose, but it's okay. It's too late for that. But for this one, I think I'm an often. I have been an always. Again, it depends. Like, it kind of depends on... For me, it's really tied into this podcast, actually. Like, if I'm researching something and I'm really diving deep into it, then I can find myself in a really bad place mentally and always be worrying. But when I take a step away or intentionally think more positively, then I can, go into that often or rarely bucket. But with where I'm at right now, I would say between often and rarely, I have a lot of hope for this planet, and I believe that we can change things. To the people that think about always worrying, I understand. I hope that 2025 can give you some relief from that. And maybe the break can be an opportunity to reset your relationship with, it could be things like media outlets or social media, or maybe the conversations that you choose to engage in. And so I hope that you're able to come back into a more, I guess, in between the view of the world. But again, you don't have to think that. If you always are worrying, I understand. I really do. To the ones that rarely worry, that's amazing. Again, like I said, we need that balance, right? I'll just quickly touch on some things that you guys said. I asked, can we change the world? How do we do it? So some of the responses were conscious living, equality and respect for all, narrowing your focus on your local community. I don't feel like I can, but I know I can live sustainably myself. Think global, act local. By changing your inner world and bringing back coherence with nature. Love, and more love. Positive reinforcement for the next generation. Yeah. I had a few here as well. It's possible if we have enough of a shift in global consciousness to tip the balance and trigger change. Those of us who are alive to the truth of what's happening must try and maintain hope no matter how slim the chances of recovery. Yeah, powerful stuff. Spread love and compassion. Work together. Reconnect with nature. Legalize plant medicine. Live in harmony with ourselves. Beautiful answers, guys. Yeah. I'm picking up on again, the theme of this, right? Focusing on yourself, think global, act local, changing your inner world, right? Doing the inner work, spreading love and positive reinforcement. Really good. How was 2024 for you? What was your experience like this year? It's been a hard year. Yeah, it was heartbreaking and disheartening to see erasure. Tumultuous and a lot of inner searching and finding meaning in this fucked up world. Bumpy but beautiful. Hard but worthwhile. Wild fluctuations of ups and downs. Tough AF year. Incredibly demanding and out of alignment. So, some other ones, grounding and calm. Learning about how to live. Change and growth. Bumpy but beautiful growth. Yep, seems like people had, a range of experiences, but I'm picking up that it was a bumpy year for a lot of us. And along with that bumpiness comes growth and comes change and comes realization. So just know if you had a tough 2024, I'm holding you in that. Always here. I had a really, really beautiful 2024. Like, there's not much I can be ungrateful about. Like, I'm in Goa. I've been traveling for 4 months. Like, I know how blessed I am. It's also been one of the most challenging years of my life. I mean, from the first 6 months of being completely burnt out, like, I couldn't exercise without breaking into a fever. Like, I lost all sense of who I was. Like, I don't recognize the person that I was. Like, that's the spot that I'm in right now. But, even the travel has been incredibly difficult and lonely and isolated and so much processing, so many things coming up that it's been tough. Like, it's been a tough year. And so I really resonate with people that have said, bumpy but beautiful and lots of ups and downs. Like, I've been on that journey this year. Lots of amazing ups, lots of very downs. But all in all, I'm grateful. And so just know if you had a hard year, I really hear you in that, and that I am always here, as I know you are always here for me. So sending you love. And I hope that this little end of year will give you the break that you need. And if you don't have that, then please take time for yourself before next year begins. Okay, last one. How did the world shift in 2024 from your perspective? Denial and ignorance of actual problems and consistent bias defense. To the right wing, money talks louder than socialism when people's pockets are light. More awareness of how rigged the Australian government is. Also shock with how the Israel situation has been handled. Shifted upside down. I didn't know the West is fucked up. I knew the West is fucked up, but I didn't know it was this fucked up. First online stream genocide on the internet has awakened humanity to the truth. Okay, that was all of the questions. Again, thank you so much to everybody who really set aside the time to give your answers to that. I really, really appreciate it. And it was really nice to hear from all of you. Doing this podcast, especially when I'm doing it by myself, it's kind of one-way traffic. Like, it's just me talking a lot, and I've talked a lot again today. But it was really nice to hear from you, and I want to try and build on that in the next year and to get you guys more involved and to hear your thoughts. And because to me, this platform is not just my experience. I want to bring in the experiences of all of us and use this platform as a way for all of us to think about change and to drive change. So I just want to say thank you very much for that. So how has this experience been for me? I just want to share a little bit about that. It's been incredibly rewarding ever since I started this podcast. I've been working on it since December last year, so it's been a year. But the first episode came out in April. Like I said, we've done 12 episodes. It's been such a beautiful journey. I've had some amazing guests on. I've had just unconditional love and support from those close to me. So I just want to shout out everybody for all of the messages, the love, the appreciation for what I've been trying to create and this community I've been trying to build. So it's really given me the wind in my sails to continue doing this. And so I just want to thank you if you've supported this show and me at all this year. Like, I really appreciate you a lot. And it's been beautiful having all of you by my side as I do this and as we continue to go on this journey together through the maze. I had my first experience with feeling down about this show. And I'm just going to share this in the sake of always being open. But when I uploaded a few episodes ago, I've never been attached to the results of this thing. Like, it's never been a thing for me. And it's not just something that I've said, oh, I don't care about the numbers. It's actually something that I really felt. Of course, I check the statistics and the likes, and it's just part of growing a platform. You need to have some knowledge of that. But I just have not attached myself to any form of result because I knew that it would take away from the joy and the real intention of doing this work. But I have to be honest, for the first time, I felt super low and dejected about where this podcast was at. Like, I started looking at the statistics and the numbers, and I said, oh, I thought I would be here, and blah, 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 blah. The mind just started going, telling me all these stories, all of these things. I should have been here. I should have done this. There should be more engagement. There should be more likes, views, da, 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 da. And I really had to sit with that for a few days. I couldn't get out of, it was really hard to get out of bed the next day that I uploaded this episode. But the place that I came back to was eventually knowing that every little bit counts. It doesn't matter if it's 5 people, 50 people, 1 person, 2 people. Like, just starting that conversation is what I believe is the magic, and having these open discussions, being vulnerable with how we're feeling about the world and bringing these ideas to life and bringing people together, hearing different perspectives. Yeah, it's honestly been one of the great, if not the greatest, one of the greatest things that came out of this year for me was this show and this platform. And so let's turn to 2025. I think the biggest thing is that for me and this podcast, I want to focus about our communities, ourselves, and those closest to us. And I want to have a big think about how to bring involvement and participation and action into those spaces, and in a way that feels right to people, and I can bring people along on that journey. Of course, we're still going to dive into all of the big things. Don't get me wrong. I love talking about these big concepts and these global things happening. We're talking about all aspects of the maze. But I do want to focus on that communal theme, and that's where I'm at right now. So expect a full podcast sometime in late January, February. But again, like I said, I'm gonna be in touch. Instagram will be active. If you're not following there, that's where I'll still be checking in, posting stuff. But that really is everything I wanted to cover today. Again, I really, really appreciate everybody that firstly has been involved in the creation of this, and then secondly to everybody that has been supporting throughout this journey. It's meant the absolute world to me, and this podcast, this community would not be anything without you. And so I'm sending you all the love in the world. I really hope that you have a beautiful break. Again, please take some time for yourself if you can. And if you're able to, have a beautiful Christmas for those that are celebrating. Happy New Year's. Take care of yourselves as always. Give big hugs to the family, your friends, everybody around you. And we will speak soon. See you in 2025. Namaste.